What the fuck? Retardo patronum.
Diversity is strength has been a repeated mantra and a major point of contention during the era of woke Western media. The assertion from the mainstream professionals who worship at this particular altar of this particular mindset argue that stories are made better, not necessarily by well-written characters, but by the mere inclusion of characters of a particular race, gender, or sexual orientation. For clarification, not stories exploring the unique experiences or the intriguing cultures behind these token characters, but simply their presence alone. The idea behind this practice focuses on the goal of
I'm sorry, but he was always gay. And this is from the fucking 90s.
Representation, which, in this context, refers to creators switching their central focus around story, where characters are created to serve roles in a plot, to the idea of representation, where characters are created or
No,
altered
he
to act
wasn't.
as stand-in.
I watched this movie literally 200 times as a kid, alright? Trust me. This guy wants to suck Gaston's cock every night.
For certain categories of certain audience members who are allegedly underrepresented in media. As Kevin Feige, boss of Marvel Studios, once said to Rotten Tomatoes, representation is important across the board, and the comics has charts the path in almost all ways for what we do in the MCU. And in the comics there are many LGBTQ characters, and we want to showcase that on screen as well. We want to bring those characters to life on the screen. Other examples of this practice at play includes DC officially changing villain characters Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy from friends to lovers, or changing the traditionally male character of Taskmaster to female in Marvel's 2021 Black Widow movie, in order to supposedly showcase more.
I'm sorry, but this Harley Quinn show, they were not the first one to make them gay either. Alright? Just saying. Alright? They were pretty gay in the comics.
Strong female characters. Or when in 2015, when Marvel Comics changed a traditionally heterosexual Iceman to homosexual by way of Jean Grey scrambling his brain, all for the sake of inclusion. To quote Kate Herron, director of Marvel's television series Loki, "From the moment I joined Loki, it was very important to me and my goal to acknowledge Loki as bisexual. It is a part of who he is and who I am too. I know this is a small step, but I'm happy, and my heart is so full to say that this is now canon in MCU. A sister assertion is, along with diversity of character, race, or gender, is diversity of creator. So, you had Marvel's America Chavez being written by Gabby Rivera, not due to a solid pedigree in superhero stories or science fiction, but simply because Gabby matched the skin color and sexuality of the character. To quote Gabby Rivera on America Chavez, "Well, we kicked the idea of America going to college. I'm new to comics. This is my first comic. And so, I was just a little stuck. Will Moss, the editor at Marvel, was like, 'Well, what's your dream school?' And that was when I was like, bam! I would want to go to Intergalactic Sotomayor University. Justice Sotomayor is a huge inspiration to me. And when I was first starting out, I read her book, My Beloved World, over and over again. I thought, what better place to explore the ancestry of black and brown intergalactic folks, aliens and other worlds? Imagine if there was a university that had all of that and was in its own separate part of the multiverse. Story used only as a vehicle for racial discussion. Or how comics professional Jose Garcia was unceremoniously dismissed from a Batgirl project because DC editorial mentioned that they didn't want male creators writing for female characters. To quote, "I was doing some tryouts for DC Comics, but I kind of got gatekept by Gail Simone. I actually landed a job on Batgirl and everything was already set for me to start drawing. The editor, I don't know if it was Gail or I don't know what happened there, but I was given this excuse that they didn't want any male artists handling Batgirl, so I pretty much I was showed the door." This mentality is also why an antagonistic flow of faux moral outrage urged Scarlett Johansson to step aside from her role as Major Kusanagi in the 2017 Ghost in the Shell movie, arguing that such a role should be reserved for a Japanese actor. Or later when the same puritanical shriek effectively forced her to walk away from a transgender role on the movie Rub and Tub, the argument again asserting that such a role should be reserved for a legitimately transgender actor. All of this boils down to what we'll call the representation mentality. which emphasizes race and gender over merit, with the presence of any actual ability being treated as a bonus. The idea behind this is the theory that increasing the variety of voices, experiences, and perspectives will make for better stories. But when American creatives mention diversity, it's painfully clear that they are emphasizing a diversity in superficial traits over all else, including life experience. Rather, it's assumed that one's skin shade and bedroom proclivities automatically come with a standard bundle of experiences like a starting kit in a role-playing game. And it's probably here where I'm supposed to go on a rant about some kind of underlying agenda, but that isn't necessarily the case. As Kelly Sue DeConnick, a comic book creator who is likely best known for grinding down Captain Marvel until all semblance of humanity has been thoroughly crushed from a character, mentioned in an interview, "We're very worried about comics right now. Mainstream comic sales are down."
Boy, that's hard because from our perspective, the industry has contracted and we're very worried about comics right now. So it's always interesting to me that the outside perspective is like, comics are booming.
Some might argue that this is simply due to a shift in audience preference from comics to movies, but the boom of Japanese manga, with series like Demon Slayer famously selling so well that the success of an individual series can be reasonably compared to the entire American comic industry, not only shows us a different take on diversity, but also displays how the woke American comic book method via social justice is objectively damaging American comics. To quote Rutgers, a New Jersey-based university known for its focus on research, superheroes may rule at the movies, but where comic books are sold, manga reigns supreme. Even years later, this claim not only remains true, but has risen in strength. As manga gained favor with American audiences, and the adoration for the American superhero comic fell, and as American comic book creators, with their plastic personalities, impotently sang the praises of a booming comics industry as they themselves were herded into a tiny corner in their very own market. Videos like this one.
Okay, so I'm at Barnes & Noble. So this is the manga. As you can see, manga, 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 and then graphic novels.
Taken by that Star Wars girl, began to flood the scene, showing exactly how badly all your Kelly Sue DeConnicks, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Daniel Kibblesmiths, and Mark Wades are being dominated in their own industry. All of which echoes back to DeConnick's ominous admission that we're very worried about comics right now. But why exactly? Does it have anything to do, perhaps, with the rampant dishonest writing of American mainstream comics, where writers like Coates are praised for their adolescent-level craftsmanship, where characters are no longer written as people, but two-dimensional conduits for often baseless political tantrums? Absolutely. However, the reality might be less of a widespread consumer revolution against agenda-driven comics, and more of a consumer walkaway from agenda-driven comics, because many of the problems pushing audiences away during the woke era of comics would still be a problem even without the political motivation. Why? Because, as always, it all boils down to story mechanics. When your main focus moves from structure, characters, and believability, the quality of the craft is diminished in favor of something else. In romances, the indulgence of a particular love fantasy may take priority over good writing. To take the romance subplot from Amazon's The Boys, for example, Starlight was still into Huey despite Huey not bringing anything to the relationship except emotional validation, a far cry from what he does in the comic, where he provides protection and refuge after Starlight becomes overwhelmed by the world, while she supported him emotionally as he dealt with the repressed sadness over his girlfriend's death. In other words, a mutual give and take. However, Starlight wasn't the vulnerable and naive character she was in the comics. She was a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. But the order had been given. The romance needed to happen anyway. So they kept the romance and left much of Starlight's vulnerability behind. And we were left with less of a couple and more of a master and pet scenario. With Mary Sue's, it's the author's personal power fantasy that takes priority, choosing moments that make their character.
Alright, 30 minutes is a little bit too long, though, sir.